I'm going to use the opportunity and do a little experiment with you, which is something I've been working on over the last couple of weeks with Tobin Hart, with whom I'm staying. So, and this will also be an introduction to the research I'm just completing and the follow-up research which I'm planning together with Tobin. So, just as a short introduction, because really I want us to have as much time as possible for the experiment itself. So I'm just finishing a PhD research that I'm doing at the University of Haifa in Israel, which is called Living Transcendence. And it's based on interviews that I conducted with 30-some spiritual exemplars or spiritual masters of different traditions and spiritual paths around the world. And from these interviews, so the main question that I asked those spiritual masters or exemplars was, what is constant and stable, and what is fluctuating and changing in your experience? And that was kind of, that's how well, it wasn't how I started. I started the interviews with, was there anything in your early years, in your childhood or teenage years, that was kind of a precursor or a harbinger for what later became the main issue or the center of your life, which is a spiritual life? And I got very interesting answers, and I think one of them you will see today. But that was more of a warm-up question. And then after that, the main question was, what is constant and stable, and what is changing and fluctuating in your experience? And so that was really the essence of my research. And I'm going to, and then, so I'm just finishing this research. I have quite a lot of recorded material from the interviews I did. And from those interviews, I pulled out nearly 40 statements that are basically kind of related to what I now call the experience of being, which is also called the existential experience or the existential feeling or the existential awareness or background experience. These are all different names for that which is, I would say, the context or the container in which all of our experiences take place. So you can think of it as the screen on which the movie of our life is projected, and we are usually our attention is completely on the movie, on what's changing and the different scenes and events, and we hardly ever notice that there is actually a screen on which all that is projected. And I'm very interested in exploring with people what their experience of that screen is, as much to the extent that we can explore that. So I pulled out statements that relate in some way or another to that screen or that background experience. And I'm now, the research I'm starting to do is I read those statements to people, to spiritual exemplars or masters, and I ask them to respond to those statements. And what I'm going to do with you today is I'm going to give you maybe just the first two statements and invite you to respond to them. And then we move on to the next part of the meeting. Okay? And any questions before I proceed? Okay. So the first statement is, there is something stable, constant, and ever present in my experience. And so whatever comes to your mind, however you want to respond to it, I'm interested. Can't hear you, Philip. You're muted.
Mind starting because whatever came to me came without thought.
Uh-huh.
And so it was two words, and it was the creative impulse.
Okay. And how do you experience that?
It just, it's been present in my life from childhood to just be in that state of self-creation. If it's not with my hands, it's with my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it always moves. Seems like there's always a project that comes that I don't create, but it's in the atmosphere for me to create. I have to tune into it. So somebody will say something to me, and I'll hear something somewhere else, and I'll say, "Oh my God, there's a link. I've got to explore that."
Mm-hmm. And would you say that creative impulse is there all the time? Is it something that is in your experience in some form all the time?
Yeah, most of the time, even in what I would consider dire circumstances, when my wife was in Alzheimer's, and it was probably one of the most creative moments in my life, actually.
And is it something that is available to you now, for example?
I'm
As
in the
an
midst, I'm in the midst of something now, yes.
uh-huh, uh-huh. Okay. And would you say that it's an experience, or is it more, do you know that you have that creative impulse when you kind of look at at what you've done throughout your life, or is it also a living experience for you?
Oh, it's both. I can see it on the screen, and I can feel it. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
you're welcome. Took a bit of courage, but
Yeah.
It's interesting the way can you say the statement one more time, Amir?
Yeah. There is something stable, constant, and ever present in my experience.
That in my experience piece was what gave me a lot to think about, because sometimes I feel I have a belief in something that is constant and stable and ever present, but how much do I actually experience that in my day to day? And so that made me pause. And what does that feel like? Do I feel that? And that was more challenging than saying, well, yes, I believe there is something within me, around me, that embodies those qualities, but how much do I live that was interesting.
So you're not sure if it's a belief or if it's an actual experience?
Yeah, I think I'm still contemplating it. I'm trying to
Okay.
observe that one. I think maybe there's moments where it's in my experience and moments where it's not, where I don't feel it as much in the foreground. It might be in the background, hidden away. And then there's other moments where it comes and it's there and it's in my experience, but it
Have
doesn't
you
feel like the majority of the time, maybe.
Can you put your attention on it right now?
If I close my eyes and change my focus, I think it's maybe in dialogue it's more challenging.
Yeah. So let's say that if you close your eyes and then what? What would you do? What kind of movement would you make inside yourself?
I would probably go to focus on the breath, and then after focusing on the breath for some time, there's something beyond that feels something, some connection.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be my process, is working with the breath.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I have an intellectual answer to it that I was able to come up with. It was refreshing to hear Phil's, just like on the spot, like, oh, these are the first two words. I was like, oh, dang, I'm not there yet. But for me, it was emptiness. My answer, to answer that question is emptiness. What is present behind all things, and what is the stable constant in my experience?
Well, is there something in your experience that resonates, correlates, kind of is a reflection of the concept of emptiness?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's every waking movement of my sense realm, of my feeling realm, my emotional realm. Yeah, so sight, sound, touch, taste, just the amalgamation of what's presented in any given moment of whatever arises. So right now it's still lingering onions from the meal that we ate, and slight anxiety, slight tinge of nervousness, anxiety, but also a lot of gratitude, a lot of like heart warming just to see everyone and to be here, like this. Yeah.
And so I'm not quite sure how how everything that you just described relates to emptiness. So I'm curious if emptiness is an actual experience, or in some form, is it actually part of your experience, or is it more kind of how you conceptualize or describe the context? I'm not quite sure what emptiness has to do with what you just described.
Yeah, probably nothing. Probably nothing. But there's it's like the base layer. It's the base, like the field that everything else is coming from, that place. So it's, all origination, it feels like, bubbles up from there. Now, do I know it all the time, or do I feel it all the time? Oh, heck no. Heck no. But there's still like an inkling. There's a sense that it's coming from that place.
Okay, so I'm very interested in that inkling or sense, because usually, so I think what I'm trying to do, what I'm interested in, is bringing that which is usually very much in the background and very unconscious, most of the time. I'm interested in bringing it to the foreground. So that's the purpose of this exercise. So that's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be great. It'd be great if that could be more present. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'd like, well, because of time, I'd like to move on to show you some of the excerpts from the interviews that I did. But if anybody wants to say anything more about their experience of that which is constant, stable, never present.
I mean, for me, I guess, Amir, there is maybe in contrast to emptiness, there is an essence of what I would describe as my self.
Yeah.
That is present for me in usually a rather delightful way. I think I find myself in my experience from moment to moment and day to day, and all the filters through which I perceive the world, through which I find relationship, through which I navigate my family and my work, and there's me. And it's a lovely invitation to think about, who is that? And why is that, and where is that? And so yeah, I'd love to have some therapy time with you, but please
Well, we're
feel
going to
free.
have some therapy time with the spiritual exemplars that I interviewed. So that
Yes.
would be so.
And before
you.
you go on, could I also say I'm so delighted to see you, Amir, and
Me too.
and so happy that you're well, and that I trust your family and loved ones in Israel and in your life are well as well. We're Facebook friends, although I'm a very bad Facebook friend. I never post anything, but I followed a little bit of your recent journeys, and
Thank
it's
you.
really nice to see you. I look forward to seeing you in person.
Wonderful. Me too. Okay. All right. Let me see if I can share screen. So these are quite short clips. Some of them are from, two of them, I think, are from interviews that I already did with this new format of reading statements and having people respond. Some of them are from my PhD research. So I just picked some excerpts where I didn't necessarily ask them about it, but they spoke about their experience in such a way. So let me see. Share screen.
Amir, are you frozen? Okay.
Oh yes.
Either that or there's some spiritual.
Oh, okay.
You're back.
Are we back?
Yes.
Back.
And can you all see the screen or not? No.
No.
Okay, let me see if I can do it again.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yep.
Yes.
You can see a screen. Okay. And I hope the volume works okay. So the first few statements are about experience. There is something stable, constant, and ever present in my experience. Just a sec. It's a bit rushed. Let me put it back on the normal speed. I'm going back. So the first few statements are about experience. There is something stable, constant, and ever present in my experience.
Yes, that is definitely true. And it was very different than before this spiritual shift happened for me in 2012. Before then, I did have all sorts of spiritual experiences that you were talking about, and some very powerful, so powerful that I had to kind of step away from it for a while. But in 2012, there was something very different that happened. I would not even call it an experience, really. I would simply call it a shift in perspective and a backing up into what was deeper and than any experience, but in which all experiences happened. It was seeing from a different place, if you will, but it's not a place. It is it's all places. It's seeing it. Everything's happening, including all experiences within this, and this has continued ever since that summer of 2012. So it's going on 14 years now. It My understanding and my articulation of it has changed over that time, but what this is has not changed because it cannot change because it's not subject to me. It's even though me, as far as this individual self, can perceive it differently and can articulate it differently. Still, this reality, this bigger reality, this is bigger than me, which is my true identity, I would say, remains constant.
Is it more of a knowing, a noetic quality, or more of a feeling, a quality, affective quality?
I think those can be expressions of it, but that's not what it is. It is a sense of boundlessness and spaciousness and inclusiveness. And that brings with it, it can produce certain emotions and thoughts and feelings and all that stuff. But those are really incidental. Those are simply the effects.
Looks like it froze on our screen, Amir. Oh, I bet Amir froze.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Gotta get better internet connection at Tobin's.
I think he's frozen as well.
Mhm.
Yep.
Wow, this is not going so well. Shall we continue? Yeah, I went back a little bit. Can you hear it clearly? Is it reasonable?
Sound is fine. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I'll try again. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And feelings and all that stuff. But those are really incidental. Those are simply the effects within my body and personality, rather than characteristics of this, ultimate reality, I would say.
So does that reality have any characteristics?
I would say not. That is, it is defined by what it's not rather than what it is. As soon as you try to say something it is, it instantly falsifies it. It instantly points away from it. As soon as you try to pin it down, it won't. It won't be pinned down. So
So this is now, now we're going to watch a short clip from the first interview I had with a Norwegian spiritual exemplar by the name of Vigdis Galborek. And she has less than 20 students or so. So I would love you to tell me, I'll start with a question that goes all the way back to your childhood. And can you think of anything in your childhood or in your teenage years that was maybe a precursor or a harbinger?
What does that mean?
Precursor is like the seed of something that develops later. And harbinger is something that when you look back, you said, well, that was kind of a sign of what was to come later in my life.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so if you can tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. The first thing was when I was really, really very small. My family were in a place outside of Oslo in the summertime, and my father used to come visiting every weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's called with a daddy boat.
Oh,
with all the dads,
yes.
And I was meeting him at a boat, and also with my mother, and we went together back into the summer place, and I hold his bag, and my father hold my mother, and he hold his bag, and I hold his bag together with him.
Yeah.
And we were going there together. I think I must have been 4 or something. And in that moment, I recognize that love is all. And not as an outside thing, but to be love is all. And then at 5, I was same place, playing under some trees, and with some flowers. And I was looking up at the trees, and there was a light coming through the branches of the tree, and this sense of oneness and union with all life was crucial. And that kind of light, in a way without words, because this is all the impulses, said that I had to be true to myself in order to become what I'm supposed to be. And in the same instant, this is not something, people think about 5-year-old as a 5-year-old. But when these kind of things happen to a small child, that child isn't a child anymore. So in that moment, path appeared. I knew what path were. I knew everything about reflection and being true.
Well, this is kind of in bits and pieces. We're slow. Okay.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So this next one is, let me just see, is an interview I did in Israel just like a couple of weeks before coming to the States, so about a month ago. And this is with a very well-known rabbi in Israel by the name of Dov Zinger. And I presented him with the first statement. So it's in Hebrew and with subtitles in English.
האמירות האלה יכול להיות שהן מתאימות לחוויה שלך כמו שהיא עכשיו, ויכול להיות שהן מתאימות לאיזה אירועים או חוויות שעברת בחיים, שהיו לך פעם. אז אני מזמין אותך להתייחס לכל אמירה איך שנראה לך, כן? יש משהו יציב, מתמשך ונוכח תמיד בחוויה שלי.
כן, אבל הוא מאוד קטן, זאת אומרת, הוא איזה מרכז מאוד מאוד מסוים, אבל מסביבו יש כל הזמן שערות, זאת אומרת, זה לא שזו החוויה הבסיסית על פני כל הדרך. אני אומר הברכה שאני הכי אוהב לברך אותה, בבוקר יש בברכות השחר הרבה ברכות, הברכה היא ברוך אתה השם אלוקינו מלך העולם ורוקה הארץ על המים. שכאילו התחושה שיש מים מתחת לכל, ויש איזה נס כזה שמישהו רקה את הארץ על המים. אנחנו הולכים על הארץ, אבל זוכרים שמתחת לארץ הכל מים בעצם. אז הברכה מאוד מפרנסת אותי, מעשירה אותי.
כן. אני רוצה לשאול אותך עוד קצת על המים.
כן.
יש למשהו הדין הזה, יש איכויות מסוימות?
קודם כל יש פסוק שאומר כי אני ידעתי, כאילו זאת אומרת, אני ידעתי כי השם הוא אלוהים, אז זה בתוכי כאילו מאוד מאוד חזק, זה חוויה פנימית מאוד מאוד חזקה, שאני יודע משהו, אבל שוב, זה תמיד מופיע עם זה שאת הרוב אני לא יודע.
כן.
זאת אומרת, יש איזו ידיעה מאוד מאוד ברורה, שאני יכול לראות במה היא מתלבשת, אני יכול לצייר אותה, אבל זו ידיעה מאוד מאוד חזקה, שמכוונת אותי כמו איזה כוונת לייזר כזאת, זאת אומרת שהיא מאוד מאוד דקה.
כן.
ושוב, תמיד היא מופיעה על רקע הסערה מסביב.
כן, כן. ההרגשה שלך היא שאתה מודע לזה כל הזמן?
כל הזמן זה יומרני, זאת אומרת, אבל זה נוכח, זאת אומרת, זה לא משהו שאני צריך לעשות מאמץ בשבילו.
כן.
זאת אומרת, זה משהו שהוא כמו שאתה נוהג, כאילו, אז אתה יודע איך לנהוג, זה לא משהו שאתה צריך כאילו להיות בערנות מטורפת, כאילו.
כן.
הייתי צריך להיות במטוס, זה נראה לי יותר, כרגע יותר.
כן.
אבל כאילו יש איזו ידיעה שלוקחת אותי, כן.
ויש לה איזה שהן איכויות, נקרא להן רגשיות?
לא יודע אם זה עונה על השאלה, אז תוכל לכוון אותי יותר, אבל זה סוג של אינטימיות, כאילו. החוויה היא חוויה אינטימית, זאת אומרת שכאילו משהו בפנים, חם, אהוב.
When I answered, I got to this, who is God for you today?
Yes.
And it was the essence of your question, which is why I was so fascinated by your research. I said, well, it's a disappointing answer, but God is the same for me as God was when God came to me when I was 12 or 13. And I had gone into the church before a Girl Scout meeting. Catholic children were trained that when you passed a church, you should make a visit. Mm-hmm. So before the meeting started, in the basement of the church, I went upstairs. It was our cathedral. Mm-hmm. And I knelt at the altar rail, and it was everything was totally dark. There wasn't even a candle burning then, except the tabernacle light, huh? And all of a sudden, the light came up on the tabernacle and got brighter and brighter and held it. And I knelt at that thing and I looked around. There were no other lights in the church. And I got scared. I didn't know what was going on. And I looked at the thing and I said, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. God is light. And that's the tabernacle. God is light. And that's all. That's the tabernacle. I left there and I never told anybody. I had no idea what had happened. And when I told the story in Seattle, all those years later, I made a joke of it. I said, I didn't know, but maybe it was the maintenance man who was working late. Maybe we had a short in the wires. I said, all I know is that in this child, this girl child, a kind of a, one size fits all kid,
yeah,
had, out of whatever the mistake was, translated it. And that brightness inside my darkness has never gone away. To this second, the feeling of it has never, ever gone away. And for a while, I was absolutely certain it was a beautiful feeling, and I thought it would disappear. And when it didn't, I got more and more cemented in it. Whatever it was, it could come or go, but I knew it had been there. And I didn't label it. I didn't call it anything. I didn't know what it was. For me, as I got older, I saw it as a phenomenal moment of internal revelation, that somehow or other, in all that darkness and in all my aloneness and in this separate world that was not a good world that I lived in, somehow or other, I had translated God as light, and that light was within me as well, and therefore I should not fear. That's all I know. That's the whole story. We can end all interviews. There is nothing else to say.
Can you talk a little bit about that light within you now?
It lives as something separate in me. Crazy language. There is no language. It's, I am me. And I never doubt that. But there's some place I go inside me where this body is nothing but body armor. It's something that I put on, but inside me, something else exists. I don't know. I don't know. It's light and it's nothing, but it weighs a lot. It's in every part of me, all the way down to the soles of my feet. and it weighs a lot. It's there, and it's not there. I know what it is. I always have an awareness. This is a perfect use of the word awareness. You're not touching it. You're not selling it. You're not boxing it. You're not explaining it. You're not understanding it. It is an awareness. Probably like young love. The minute I saw her, I knew I loved her.
Yes.
It was an awareness.
Yes.
And the awareness has not worn off. That's it.
How do you relate to that?
So my sense of the sacred is that it is itself, well, to the extent that I can put words to what I experience, it is itself the essence of connectivity. It is the impulse to express wholeness, and wholeness not as a static state, but as an ongoing and generative and emerging connectiveness.
Have you had moments or times in your life when that was ecstatically evident, and other times when what's called the dark night of the soul, where you were like, where is it? Where has it gone?
Yes and no. There have been times when it has been ecstatically present. And I find I can actually enter into that kind of a state if I choose to, but you know, it doesn't seem necessary, actually.
That's interesting.
It gets in the way, in a sense, because
I'd love to understand that more.
Sure, I'll be happy to explain that. But on the other side, the dark night of the soul, I've experienced downtimes. I've experienced periods of depression and feeling down, but I've never experienced a sense of being abandoned or a sense that the sacred is not present. It's always there. I'm just not always able to draw it into my life as fully as I might like. And when I'm in one of those down periods, and interestingly enough, I think that rhythm in our lives is important. It's kind of like tides moving in and out. There's a rhythm there that if we allow it, if I don't fight the downtime, if I don't say, get all upset about it, but I just kind of surrender to it and go into it, then I come out the other side strengthened. I come out with a deeper sense of that connection than I might have had before. So the thing about the ecstasy, I'm very oriented towards the ordinary, to the sacredness of the ordinary.
Yes.
And I think some of it is I've known people, and I've certainly witnessed people over the years who go into ecstatic states, and I respect that, and I appreciate what they're experiencing, but it seems like they lose touch with the ordinary. They lose touch with the flow and circulation of sacredness in the daily round. And for whatever reason or purpose, that for me is where my attention is. That's where my work is. So I celebrate that. My friend William Irwin Thompson used to say that I had a peanut butter spirituality because it was all about the spirituality of making peanut butter sandwiches rather than having a mountaintop peak experience.
Well, what do you mean that? I mean, do you would you go as far as to say that you sometimes feel the emergence of an ecstatic or transcendent feeling and you would deliberately, volitionally not go with it?
Oh, if it comes to me, I enjoy it.
Okay.
I accept it as a gift, but at the same time, I'm looking for ways that it can flow into the groundedness of my life. I'm looking for how it can not stay as an experience unto itself.
See, I think I'm going to skip because we don't have much time. I just want to show you the last one. Yes, Nicola Johnson. Have there been times that you recently in the last 10 or 20 years that would be considered the dark night of the soul, where you felt you were lost, you didn't really know what you were doing and where you were going?
No, that's constant.
That's what?
Constant. That's the underlying, that's the fear place. If you're afraid of being in the dark night of the soul, and if you think spiritual growth and attunement is some blissful, beautiful, sun-filled room, then you're going to the wrong party, because that's not the party. The party is that it's the dark night of the soul constantly, because we're always stripping off and evolving out of a place of some comfort to a place of discomfort, always, until I get to wherever, if there's some other place. But I'm always in a knowingness that I mean, not in the way where you close yourself in the room and you won't come out. I have a really good attitude about things, but it's an internal struggle all the time to stay on this path. It would be much easier for me to do it, not easier from an evolutionary standpoint, but just from a mental construct, to go back to my old life would be much easier. The spiritual journey is not for the faint of heart. It's always a dark night, because there's no given, there's no playbook, and there's no given that if you do this, you'll get that. But what I wonder, is that in life is there. So when you move out of control of things and you move out of the fear of having no control, then you're just always in the unknown. I'm just living in the unknown and I'm embracing it. That's really the dark night of the soul, is it's the unknown. And most people fight it. So when you relinquish that struggle, then it looks different, but it's still the same. I'm still in the unknown, and it's never going to come together in a way that will be, well, some people will have it, the total bliss and whatever, but I think the journey of it is about learning to sit in it and still being joyful. I have joy all the time. I feel joyful, but that's not to say that it's not challenging or difficult or, it's got all of the attributes. I'm just learned how to live with them and not let them be the ruler of my life.
All right. That's it, a few samplings. So I'd love to hear kind of what did you resonate with, what you didn't resonate with, what kind of was interesting, what did you learn? Like, very open. I'm curious to know what effect watching these excerpts has on people, on you.
It's tremendously compelling. It's like, I don't know, I feel a magnetic attraction to, like, I'm hanging on each word. I really, I'm sure that was a very intentionally edited, curated selection of what I'm sure are hundreds of hours of your interviews and things. But wow, really, I guess for me, one part that resonated was, can't remember everyone's name, but this, I think, second to last person that you shared with us
David
was
Spangler.
maybe.
David Spangler with the earphones.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. He was talking about the peanut butter.
Yeah.
Peanut butter man. I loved that, and I really feel like that, much like, I don't know what I've heard from folks like Thich Nhat Hanh, actually from Parker Palmer in your interview with him that we featured in the journal, the coming to ground, the groundedness, the ordinary, as Spangler said. Love that. I just think that kind of take on what is spirituality, what counts as spiritual encounter, what is so accessible. It makes me feel like that there's hope there for each of us to encounter on a daily basis, that kind of presence, that kind of experience. Whereas traditionally, many organized religions, I think, hold those experiences as somehow, this like commodity that only some have access to, only after great effort and pain and trial. And I think that's partly what's turned me off of religion in my lifetime. And so anyway, that was one thing that resonated.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I found a gift, tremendous gift, collectively and individually. I kept thinking, will I have an opportunity to read this?
Say again? What?
Will I have an opportunity to read this? It actually brought me back into a book I'm reading right now about an Israeli whose name is Moshe Feldenkrais. And it talks not about the method, but about the person. And a lot of the things that you're talking about came through him. It's really beautiful. This is also synchronous that I'm sitting here and hearing your remarks today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It was very beautiful and so powerful. I don't know how to best describe listening to these great minds. I was wondering what I was curious about what made you interview these spiritual leaders.
You mean why I went on this research?
Yeah.
Because I've had very significant transcendence experiences or peak experiences in my life, but they remained, and they changed my life, but they remained as peak experiences. So they were not my constant ongoing experience. And I thought, well, I read all these descriptions of people who live on a spiritual high plateau, as Abraham Maslow called it. So they're not experiencing peak experiences and then come down, but they actually live on a spiritual high plateau. So I thought, well, that's kind of, I would like to maintain attention in myself with that possibility that this may happen to me in this lifetime. So I'm going to seek out people who exemplify that state and engage with them and interact and create a relationship with them, and that would be a good way of kind of keeping that alive in my awareness. And maybe, I also thought maybe I will find among them somebody who would be my teacher to help me make that shift and stabilize in it. So it was a very personal was part of my personal spiritual journey. And then I was lucky to find a PhD supervisor who is also a dear friend who was willing to support me in that, and so that's kind of how it worked. I really framed the question and the whole research around my spiritual seeking.
Thank you for sharing. I am wondering how that this is just so beautiful. And like Paul mentioned, that this could be possible to anyone, very ordinary people too. And on your second doctoral degree dissertation, I wonder if you want to also maybe interview children, and children who can express, maybe they're old enough to experience explain their experiences, what it's like. I'm very curious. I am resonating with the last interviewee, the lady, and something that she mentioned about the dark night of the soul, that it's not like the spiritual leaders are enlightened forever. They are going through almost every day their darker side, but then they are connected deeply to the light, or the powerful experience or event that they experienced, very private, very personal. But I think those are the kind of guiding power for them to continue their journey.
Yes. Well, a lot of them, or quite a few of them, described how that which is constant and stable and ever present in their experience was there even when they went through, like Parker Palmer described 2 episodes of depression that he had, long, like half a year episodes of depression. But he said, but he never felt separate from the sacredness of everything. Or people who went through, pneumonia that almost they thought that they were going to die, or a very difficult divorce. Challenges like same challenges that everybody goes through in life. But somehow that did not diminish or even touch their sense of the ground of their experience and their connection to the sacred or to the absolute. So, and I think that that's a gift that they are offering, and I do intend to do this kind of exposing people and then having people reflect on their experience of that which is stable and constant with students of education and theology and philosophy and psychology. I think that that's kind of my long-term goal, is to make that available to as many learning adults as possible. And I didn't think so much about having that with children. I think somebody else would probably have to translate it to a language that children understand, because I don't have any experience like that. But it's
you should talk with Tobin, of course.
Yes.
Because his book, The Secret Spiritual World of Children,
yes.
He might have a few ideas.
That's right. I got to tell you, quite a few people, like you saw the Vigdis, the Norwegian teacher exemplar, quite a few people describe similar experiences at very young ages that really kind of I'm just thinking of one who said, well, at that age, I had no way of understanding what happened, but that experience stayed with me throughout my growing up years as the most significant and the most real experience I had in my life. And then when I was 18, I decided I needed to go seeking and getting that experience again. So he went and spent 18 years in monasteries in Japan and Korea. But that kind of effect that an early childhood experience of whatever, the absolute or God can have really determine one's life. We're just 2 minutes over time, so I'm happy to stay, but I think
I'm just wondering, what it was like to you to be you mentioned about Japan and Korea, in totally different culture. You probably are rather were standing out than not, and very different cultural experience in spirituality. That's so fascinating to me.
yes, so first of all, that was in the early 80s. That was like 40 years ago that I went to Japan, and yeah, the people in the village where the monastery was were like checking me out all the time, you know, because it was a rare sight for them. I'm very interested in engaging with spirituality that is very different from the kind of spirituality that I'm used to. So I'm much more used to the Abrahamic traditions, you know, Judaism and Sufism, Christianity, and to some extent to the Eastern, especially the Buddhist and Hindu traditions, not so much Taoism. But I'm actually very interested in being exposed and engaging with types or paths of spirituality that I'm not so familiar with, because I believe that the essence is the same, and that the more I drop off any specific language, the closer I get to that essence. So I actually find great value in engaging with, for example, David Spangler. I have to tell you, I approached interviewing him with some apprehension because I read about him, and he's somebody who is in ongoing contact since his 20s with he's channeling some entities from other planets, and it's like, how will I be able to overcome the kind of my attitude toward that kind of spirituality? Well, when I actually met the guy and in the interview, that was not an issue at all, because there's something so childlike and so he's so innocent and so open about his experience that all my reservations were out the window the minute we started speaking. So that was a delightful experience for me.
Have you had some of your dialogues for your research with folks living in indigenous communities in different places in the world?
Yeah, I did. The one that stands out most, I'd love to show you, Mangaza Kandemwa from Zimbabwe. Beautiful, like incredible human being. And another shaman woman from South Africa, and one from Greenland, and yeah. So I did meet some indigenous spirituality exemplars or shaman exemplars, and that was definitely an enriching and fascinating experience.
Yeah.
It occurred to me that this would make an incredible documentary. I mean, like,
yeah, I agree, and I think that a lot of what gets communicated is nonverbal. So actually, I think that in movie you get a lot more transmission than if you read just the words, the text of what they said. So I am filming nowadays. I bought a whole set of 3 cameras, and I go travel around and set the cameras whenever I interview somebody. That's my idea.
That's great.
Wow. Thank you, Amir.
Thank you.
For joining us.
I'm so glad to have come today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Wonderful, and I look forward to seeing some of you, most of you, in Ashland.